So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another fantastic, amazing, awesome show of the killer crossover, most killer crossover since Allen Iverson. It's the Sex-On Shuffle, just another podcast mashup
without mashing up.
Without mashing up. I guess. I don't know. It's whatever. But yeah, I am Just.Hek. And
peace, y'all. I'm Cindy Lee.
Right.
They and she.
Boom. And tonight is going to be a bit of a mashup of topics. We're going to talk about some events, current events in the world and current events in our lives and, you know, stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, I know, Cindy, you're out in Connecticut and, you know, nothing really happens in Connecticut. So
we can start with New York.
Nothing really happens in Connecticut, but we'll say, well, I mean, if you've been living under a rock, so a man by the name of Frank James of Brooklyn, New York, he's the prime suspect in the shooting that took place on Tuesday. And supposedly he gas bombed a subway car and proceeded to shoot 10 people. Luckily, none of the people who were shot suffered life-threatening injuries, but you know, he had an elaborate suit on. He had a gas mask. He had like not a transit worker suit, but like a kind of a construction suit that could have passed for a transit worker suit, and proceeded to shoot 10 people.
Planned out.
Yeah,
it was a gas mask, right? It was. He woke up that morning with the intention of causing mass harm. Damn.
At least that's what that's the thought. I mean, there was initially, because it was Sunset Park, I thought it was like some sort of gang related stuff, because stuff has been happening a lot as well in the city. I mean, we've had a lot of youth related deaths, unfortunately, and shootings due to, you know, especially like in the Bronx and Brooklyn specifically. There's been a crazy rise in robberies and gun violence. So my initial thought was, it was, you know, probably some young people doing some dumb shit, you know, gang related stuff or whatever. And then a friend of mine had texted me and was like, yo, did you hear about it? I was like, I heard about it. I was like, but it's probably some dumb gang stuff. I was like, it's in Sunset Park. He was like, you need to read this because you sound a little racist right now. And I was like, so I was like, okay, well. So when I read it, I was like, oh, wow, this wasn't gang violence. This was one person who, you know, who gassed a train car and then started shooting people.
That's awful.
Which is it's sad and it's alarming. But he was caught today. He was caught on 8th Street and 1st Avenue in Manhattan, which is sort of like the East Village section of New York City. What he was doing in the East Village, we don't know as of yet, but he was in plain clothes and he was just walking around. But he's been charged in federal court. So he's got a terrorist charge.
They did do it, because I know before they caught him, the big thing was they weren't saying it was terrorist activity.
Yeah, so they're hitting him with that, even if, you know, because it is an act of terrorism, so to speak. And unfortunately, it's gonna be crazy. I mean, he shot 10 people, 29 people in total were injured because of the smoke inhalation and stuff like that.
Sure.
People that were like trampled and stuff. And it's just it's alarming. What were your thoughts when you heard about it?
Initially I'm like, oh shit. And what happened? Like, was it an accident? Was it cops? Like, who was involved in it? I checked on folks, or I saw that folks like checked in on Facebook to see everything was peace. I saw it was a Sunset Park. Because at first all I saw was Brooklyn. I didn't know that they apprehended someone today. My heart goes out to the folks that are injured, but my initial instinct was all the increase of police activity, and with Eric Adams being mayor and wanting to buff up police, it hasn't done anything in terms of securing and safety. Like from what I'm hearing, right? Like the past couple of weeks, I've been hearing a lot about them doubling and tripling up police activity and like pushing homeless folks out, like moving homeless folks out the subway. So I'm curious as to what happened. What's the rationale behind this? This shit is violent. It doesn't need a reason. But I'm curious, like you told me that this was like the only subway station that didn't have a camera, right? Like, was that part of this planning? Right, working. Functional, sure. Which I'm surprised. I would assume that it'd be more than that station.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, my big thing was like all of that and like upping up new NYPD's budget to like $10 billion. And I don't see the reflection of that, instead of incorporating that funding into probably things that the community could benefit from. But again, that's where my head goes when I think about these things. It's, oh shit, that's fucked up and violent, and the system piece too.
It's funny that you say that that's what you've heard, because I haven't seen it. I haven't seen, I mean, maybe it's going to areas where it's needed, and it's kind of 50-50 that's needed where I live, because it's where I live it's not a totally dangerous place. But it's not, I mean, where I live, my enclave is pretty peaceful.
Yeah.
And then the surrounding neighborhood has a couple of spots, but I haven't seen it. I mean, I saw it today in the subway, and I didn't even connect it to the incident. I just seen all these cops, and I'm just like, what happened?
Yeah.
Like, whatever, I'm on my way to work. And then when I get to 34th Street is when I realized, I'm like, oh, is it? The train was like, it was pretty empty.
Yeah, and it's related.
Yeah, and then I realized, oh yeah, this is in relation to that. And I'm like, then I was asked when I got to work, like, how was my commute? And my thing is, I mean, I'm always on point. You know what I mean? I mean, there's only so much you can do in a box car anyway, but
yeah. I
mean, we're trained to be on point and look at people anyway. Like it's just part of the upbringing. Be on point, because you never know. I mean, it could be
trauma.
It could be a cop. It could be a cop. Yes, no, it's definitely trauma too.
Right, like the hypervigilance. I mean, it's a safety measure, right? Like there's no shade in it. It works.
No, definitely. Yeah, because it's always, because it could be the least thing you expect. And so, I think my thing is, I've always been on point. And I mean, I'm not saying that I would have gotten out of that unscathed, but some guy getting on train with a gas mask in his hand, or that's gonna be a thing. Like, wait a minute, why you got a gas mask?
He's putting it on. Why is he putting
on a gas mask? Okay, I need to get to the next car. You know what I'm saying? Or duck, whichever one.
And you weren't commuting. You weren't commuting during this, right? Because I'm
no, I was already at work.
You were already at work when this happened.
Yeah. I was already at work, and I still didn't even. I don't know. I was just like, man, that's crazy. And, you know, we need to, I don't know. I think since in my mind, ever since they talked about defunding the police, there's been less of a presence. And I don't know if maybe that's because of COVID, or maybe that's the police department's way of saying, oh, well, you don't think you need us, watch what happens. And defunding the police is never about eliminating police. Defunding the police is just taking the excess money that is put into police protection and spreading it to programs that need it, like after school programming, parks and recreation, you know, stuff that can help inner city youth, you know what I'm saying, or whatever, you know what I'm saying, just things with, you know.
And part of the goal is to eliminate the police, right? At least for folks who believe in abolition as a way of moving, but understanding that it can't go from, you know, all of this to nothing, right? Like, but
I don't think that's realistic either.
I mean, it's happening already, right? There's I'm sure there's plenty of receipts in the US alone of instances where communities have had to defend themselves because they either defended themselves from the police or the police feel like they're a non-factor.
Right.
But from what I've read recently, I think the NYPD's budget is now 10 billion, which makes it the 24th largest like military spender. And I'm happy to put some resources, right? Because they've upped it. And that's what made me think, I don't know, I haven't had my pulse, you know, I haven't been tapped in terms of the government, but I don't know how Eric Adams came into office. But I know that he's also really pro-cop, really retired police commissioner, I think, right? So like all those little pieces.
He's former NYPD.
Former NYPD, so not commissioner. Okay.
I don't know, I don't think commissioner at all. I think he's of the NYPD. I think he's a former cop or whatever it is.
Right, for sure. Because I mean those things play a part. But outside of New York, this is not, you know, unfortunately, this is not uncommon. Like I'm on Twitter a lot, and I feel like Twitter is what keeps me the most current, right? At least my algorithm of Twitter.
So really quickly, Eric Adams served as an officer in New York City Transit Police and then the New York City Police Department for over 20 years. He retired at the rank of captain, and that's where it is. So
that's pro-cop to me.
He's a former cop. Yeah.
Right. Totally. And it's, you know, I'm sure there's like, that's when representation without nuance becomes a thing, right? When we think about like, oh, look, we're more diverse and we don't need more diversity. We don't need DEI in police enforcement, at least in my opinion. We just need a different structure and abolition overall. But yeah, I mean, if you look about, there's a lot of shootings that have happened, mass shootings in open spaces in these past, I think 2022 alone, even some that don't even hit the news. So it's really thinking about what is these factors, and it makes me think about all those pieces and that it's still a pandemic. And that's why I asked you if you were like commuting, because it makes me think about how many folks just shift so much into making things go quote unquote back to normal that they don't leave space for that shooting potentially being something that is traumatizing to somebody, whether they're present or just knowing that that is happening.
Right.
And I saw differences in how people reacted. Like folks who, I saw students who were getting, told by their professors, you still got a quiz today. Versus like some other folks that are like, oh, take the day off, do what you need to do, or come to the office if you need some type of like, I don't even know, processing kind of thing. So that's why I was curious as to what's happening, because sometimes this shit happens so much that we can desensitize or just want to remain going back to normal. But like, this shit ain't normal, right? Like this being always on pins and needles, or being like, oh, it's just New York City, that's just what it is. Like that impacts our fucking nervous system. So I just wanted to know how was your reaction to it, or how was your job's reaction to it?
Yeah, I mean, it was, we didn't really get into it too much. People were talking about it, like the members, the clients in my job, they were talking about it, and we all shared opinions or whatever. But my experience isn't the lived experience, so I don't really. I'm probably desensitized for it. To be honest with you, I'm desensitized for it. Of all different types of violence, just from life. So, and it's not to say that I didn't think, it didn't affect me personally, or it didn't affect me, I think like my wife called me, and she was upset about it, was worried because I didn't pick up right away, but I called her and let her know everything was all right, and we talked, and it was it. And so, I think that there definitely could be a change. There definitely needs to be some sort of change to the system. But I think we do need police. They're just, because I just know there are just people out there that are just really bad. Like they're just, and I've come across a lot of people in my lifetime that I just don't know, whatever trauma they went through or whatever stuff they went through, that these people just, their day was all about hurting people. And there are people out there like that. And
a lot of them
the police, sure, a lot of them are cops, but a lot of them are just regular people as well. Like, we can point fingers at the police, and I got a story or two about police, but it's both sides. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not gonna say, I don't want, we got to get rid of cops. No, I think we do need police. But we just need the right system in place. Because to say we don't need police, and there are people running around that are just like, I was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, this kid, like I was walking in my neighborhood towards one of the other parts, and this kid like had a gun out, and he was talking to this other kid like whatever, and I'm looking like, oh wow. So I kind of picked up the pace a little bit, but in my mind, there was not a cop in sight. I'm like, like, where are the police? Where are the police? And I mean, we need, the structure definitely needs to be changed. I can agree to that. But I don't agree with us not needing police. Because there have been instances in my life where a police saved my life. There have been instances in my life where police were trying to do something to me, or whatever. So it's 50-50. I don't think leaning all the way to one side is an unbalance. And if you got a better system in place, certainly. But there are guns in the street, and like to say that we don't need someone to police that well, we're gonna police ourselves. So you're gonna give me a gun and we just shoot it out? That's unconscionable. Like that's not.
I say let's not continue the conversation, because I'm like, I think it ends up being too reductive, right? Like it ends up being like, oh, it's this, or oh, if this, what system do you have? No, there are people working on these particular systems. That should exist, because at the same time, there's plenty of quote unquote bad people that get away with all the bad shit they do because of whatever privilege, or don't, because I know that's the thing with when people talk about abolition, they always want to go, what about the murderers and the rapists? I'm like, they get 6 months. If they get caught, like a lot of times, or you don't listen to the victims, right? Like, so there's a lot of nuance that I feel like
it depends on who is the criminal and who is the victim as well. Because if, obviously if it's a person of color, they get caught, it's cop out or the max. Okay. And, so yeah, there's definitely a difference in that. But, I think that's something that we need to fix. And yeah, what is the plan? I mean, I don't know what people are working on. And from what I see when I'm in my community, and I live in the inner city, what I see is I don't see enough police around, and I see these little instances, these things happening with people. And I'm like, if there was just a cop there just to say, yo, what are you doing? Or whatever, it may not stop it completely, but it stops something, or, or whatever. I don't know. I'll never lean too left or too right. I'm definitely down to meet in the middle. Again, there has to be a balance to this, because not all the bad people are white. Not all the bad people are black. You know what I'm saying? We're all painting these different narratives, and it's not. I mean, sure, the police, the prison systems are more loaded with people of color, and we definitely need to fix that. I think some of that has been fixed. But it's been, so in New York, I think it's gone the way where it's been vindictive almost, because they've let people go on bail that had like multiple gun charges. Now they got caught with the firearm and had multiple gun charges prior to that. Normally you get held and your bail gets high because you are, you are an enemy to the community or whatever you were doing when you got caught with that gun, whatever you was doing, that made you liable to get put in prison for whatever time until you bailed out. But they're letting people go, and then these same people are committing a crime right after they get out. And I don't know if that's really the justice system, or that's just certain people being like, oh, look, you guys are trying to make a change, and this is why we're telling you you can't change it. This is why, look what happened. And it's kind of to be counterproductive against the change in a way. That's how I kind of see it. But
if that shit is not done, I see plenty of cops that will be like, oh, well, I'll remember not to come to your house when something happens, right? Like they personalize the fact that we believe that this shit doesn't exist, or the fact that historically it's been put in place. Like it's its own gang, right? Like to the point that they propped up, like militarized, which is why, look, that's why I said, again, I don't want to talk about this. This is not an abolition episode. We can talk about an abolition episode, but we will continue to lean in different directions.
Right. Okay.
Because I hear nuance. I'm here for nuance. I understand where my leanings are. So yes, nuance and ACAB.
What's ACAB? What's that?
All cops are bad.
Oh,
all of them.
I don't believe that's true.
Right. That's why I'm like, we will disagree.
I got friends that are cops. And
that's true. That's fine. Me too.
And
they'll need to understand that that's what it is. If you work within that system, right? Like that's part of it, right? Like and that's why we are open to having difference of opinion and bias and nuance, but also to recognize where that comes from, right? Like I have a very, my way of looking at things comes very differently, regardless of my friends. I got friends that are cops, but I'm not personalizing it, right? I'm looking at it from the system of it.
Okay.
Because sure, I've worked with community member cops, and I'm not here to that, right? Like it sounds very much like not all men. Well, we're not talking about that. When the receipts and the studies and the statistics show, right? And the fact that all that shit that happened in 2020 and everyone all of a sudden had an aha moment if you didn't know about certain things, right? Everybody all of a sudden was like, oh my God, there's racism still? But I voted for Obama, right? So like all of these things got tied together, right? And people were really focused because they was at home or whatever they was doing, right? And that's not taken away from people who've been focused. But now, look at all the other pieces. Look even at the news. When you take a look at some of our news and people look to news like that's truth, right?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be bipartisan or like no bias or at least amount of bias. But if you look at some of the big newspapers, they've been having articles written by cops or retired cops who have cited other cop articles or cited other people in the law enforcement to prop up whatever they want to, the message they want to give, right? Like crime is high, but crime is high is a very vague statement. And you look at the studies, crime went from 10 homicides to 11, right? So they're not lying, but that's what I mean. I just disagree with me, that's fine, but let your shit be rooted in stuff.
I don't disagree.
No, not you. I mean, period. Like to a listener, like you can agree or disagree with any of us.
Right.
Just stand on it and be rooted in it, which is why I was like, I don't want to keep talking about it because I ain't prepped for that. We ain't having an abolition conversation. I could add some abolition resources to the podcast notes, but we was just talking about current events, and I'm always gonna tie it back to white supremacy. I know. Next is we're gonna talk about other instances of white supremacy, which are the fact that IRS and the motherfucking taxes are due next week for most of us.
Did you file yet? Did you file yet?
No, because I like to take my time.
Yeah. Because
I do them by myself. Give or take a software.
Yeah.
And I don't have a full-time, like my full-time job is me, right? Like it's my business and it hits different. Like I miss W-2 day, like W-2 life.
But you have to itemize a lot more.
Yeah, I gotta do a lot of deductions and I gotta be on my bookkeeping, right? Before I used to make my own little spreadsheet. Now I'm like, what software is beneficial to me? And then again, going back to white supremacy and capitalism, right? I just sent to my newsletter this week. And if you haven't been a part of my newsletter, you should. You can get Shimmies in your inbox every month. But, I put an article there from 2019 because I didn't realize it either. Shout out to Brunch and Budget. TurboTax has been one of the leading people in fighting to make sure that the Americans have to pay for taxes, like have to pay to get their taxes done. Because if you look at some other countries, and I'll look for some resources too, like the United States has our tax information already, right? Like they get it.
Yeah.
So the fact that they make us give it and I have to pay, right? Like it's supporting the system,
right.
Is wild to me. And especially when you find out that they're one of the leading softwares, but they're one of the leading people trying to lobby and make sure that we don't ever get free or like we don't ever get to have free, right? And there's free options if you qualify, right? If you go to like IRS Free File, you can work with some of those big softwares for free, right? They have that available, but you got to meet certain criteria, right? Like you got to be either in the military or be in a certain income, which is helpful for a lot of people. But at the same time, a lot of people are paying TurboTax or, Jackson Hewitt or whatever. When, again, they have this data already. So why put us in a place of having to put this extra shit out? And then, we worried about audits. I've been worried about audits my whole life. And I'm like, they ain't looking for me. I ain't smuggling millions of dollars. Like, if anything, they're probably maybe paying attention to more corporate folks, maybe. But they ain't gonna be like trying to audit us. And at the same time, I've known people that have gotten audited.
Knock on wood.
Right? Like, I know people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I won't put it past.
Yeah.
And when you think about that, they have that data already. Why set us up for failure? Why put us with these hard ass things?
Yeah.
And then change them every year.
I did my taxes today before the podcast. Just because I just wanted to get it over with. And I usually wait till this month because I know my shit gets ate up. So, and I'm just like, whatever. Yeah, like I'm not getting, like, if I get anything back, I kind of owe the government. So they're just going to take it from me anyway.
Yeah.
But what I found weird is that living in New York, no matter how much taxes you pay, I claim single and I claim zero. Right? Even though I'm married, because I want them to take the most taxes possible.
So you don't got to deal with it later. Yeah, I did.
I still end up owing.
That's
I end up owing. And what isn't even crazier stuff. So I made some donations that kind of worked for me on the federal side.
Right, for charitable contributions.
When I did those donations on the New York side, I owed more money. So I went back and I took them off because I was like, nah. Yeah, like literally I was like, so my initial was like 8, it was like 8 and change. So I looked, I said, well, wait a minute, let me look to make sure. And I said, oh, the donations, I didn't put that in. I put it in. And my shit went up to almost $1,000. And I'm like, how do I donate money and I owe more money? So I went back. I said, no, let me take it off because you know what? I don't need to claim it anyway. You got me. So I'm at 883, I think, right now, and I'm like, I'll pay out when I'll pay out when I pay out. But it's crazy. Like, it's literally crazy. Like to think that you pay all these taxes and you still end up owing money. And the free file stuff, I mean, you're right. But really, certain itemizations, certain deductions, you have to be in the armed forces, but they have like 5 or 6 free. TurboTax used to be free, and then they stopped because I was messing with TurboTax for like 2 years. And if you make less than $73,000, you can file your taxes for free. So I was able to file for free. I just missed it, thank God. But it was crazy because I was like, yo, like I may have to pay some amount of money, and it ended up being that I didn't have to pay anything. So that was crazy. But I just was thinking, like, how is the federal government being so, they're giving me money back, but my own state where I live and I give all my taxes to religiously, I end up owing money. And I'm like, how is that? Like, if you pay all your taxes, if you're taxed to the max, you shouldn't have to, like, at least break even. Just say we're good. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm good with that. Just tell me I don't owe nothing. Like
why do you owe? Yeah.
I don't want nothing back. Take it all. You know what I mean? Whatever. But to say I owe you money, how do I owe you money? It's crazy. So,
and I feel like that's wild. I wonder if it has to do with, I feel like in the past couple of years, maybe 2020, I'm not sure. If I find it, I'll put it in the resources. I think that they stopped allowing employees to do business deductions. Mm-hmm. Like you have to have a business, and maybe that's why, because the charitable contribution, they might count that as a business. And I don't know if you're an accountant and you are friends and you want to come on the show, come after taxes, because I know you over us right now. If I was an accountant, I'd be like, I'm taking all of April to May off. I'll holler at you later. But yeah, that might be the reason. There are other free ones, because I know for a while I was using Credit Karma, and then they just sold it to Cash App. So now Cash App has free taxes. Okay. And there's a few other ones that I could post OLT, in the notes.
There's tax something. There's certain like they're like, and you're right. So I didn't see anything with the armed forces, but because of the state that they're located in, because
it depends on that. Yeah.
It depends on where you're at. So if you're in New York, but you're following one of those free filing apps, if you live in New York and I think one of them based in Texas, they're gonna charge you like $100. Like you don't qualify, or you'll get your federal for free, but your state won't be free. Something like that. Like
yeah, New York is one of the ones that it has a free state. Yeah. The states don't. So there's like a list of like maybe 15 states, like Connecticut, no. So if I do the free tax, I think I'm doing the free tax through Tax Act, I think I'm working on. Yeah. I think because I live in Connecticut, I might have to pay state. But that's why if your shit ain't complicated and you just got, like a 9 to 5 or some side hustles or whatever, if you feel like it's not a lot of difficulty, use one of the free ones, use Cash App. I know the only thing I don't like about the Cash App is that there's not a lot of customer service. So you have to be on your research game. Like you gotta be Googling and making sure that it's not just a blog, but that it's coming from like reputable stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like, being an adult sucks. I'm just gonna put that out there. Like, listen, all those years of being like, oh, when I get older, I'm gonna go do this and I'm gonna go do that. Yeah, you're gonna have to pay taxes and pay health care and I didn't sign up for that.
I didn't sign up to not be informed. Like I wish they prepped us. That's the life skills that I think would have been beneficial. So that I'm not set up. Right? I feel like the young people now, they know a little more because they're so exposed to so much information if it's available for them.
Yeah.
That, I don't know. Adult sucks. I feel I like childhood stuff. And we are adults. What does it look like to find ways to make it not suck? Because we have those permissions sometimes. Depending on what you're into, because you could be trash and you could be wanting to do trash shit. So there's always context. I gotta make sure there's context. Be like, oh, Cindy Lee said I could do. No, I did not fucking say that.
No, it's listen, man. I don't know about all that. I just know that I didn't know about taxes until I had my first real job. And everyone was like, oh. And I had like people in my fiscal department, which was like all in the fiscal. Same. Yeah, I had it was my first job. It was in a small office. That was kind of big, but the fiscal office was literally a 30-second walk up the aisle.
Yeah.
And everybody in the fiscal office was like, oh, I'll do your taxes. And I'm like, do I have to do taxes? They were like, well, when you get your W-2, we'll see it. And I looked and I said, they were like, oh yeah, you got to do your taxes. You made more than the minimum amount. I said, okay, so I'll give. So this lady did my taxes and she did them wrong. She did them wrong. So I thought I was only getting $200 back, which I didn't care because I was like, $200. Like, I'm getting money back.
Yeah.
I'm getting money back. Air Jordans. Woo. Right. But I got a letter from the IRS saying that my taxes were done wrong. And that's happened to me like twice, where the IRS has caught an error and they were like, listen, this is what you're really owed. And we're going to send you this check. And I was just like, wow. And so I ended up getting back like $1,300. And couldn't tell me nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. You know, and then everything that I learned from being an adult came from like the lived-in experience. Like, no, you know, even and I went to independent living because of being in foster care. Like, you had when they're not aging you out, but like at 18, 17, like really they started like 15, 16. They start you then because a lot of kids are living on their own at that time. And so all through that, the only thing that I can recall was like change of address forms, like doing that when you moved and having an ID being important and your social, like those are things I remembered. But I wish they had said something about like doing your taxes, and, you know, why being an owner versus renting is important, you know, these stuff like that. So that way, you know, the mindset would have been less about, yo, I'm just gonna get an apartment, and it would have been maybe like, yo, I want to get to a house.
Future planning. They never incorporated that. Like, what does it look like to have long term? They just wanted our money in a bank. They wanted us to know about a savings and a
savings
checking.
Account. 100%. And like, and that did nothing for me because I just would take the money and spend it. So, you know, it was just and
how to be a good consumer. Right, because you don't want to have your money in the mattress. I remember that we used to have to do that financial literacy shit without really talking about anything. Which is why I bought a house straight out of undergrad with no fucking information and no common sense at that time, and didn't think. Why would I add more? Why are they giving this house to me when I have no income? Why was this so easy?
Yeah. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
It's wild. I remember getting a credit card for like $4,000.
Yeah.
And I had no credit. And I'm like, why am I getting this credit card for $4,000?
I mean, that's a whole look. I feel like we need to have a conversation about that because I'm like, they would increase my limit without telling me. And I'm like, how did I get to 16 stacks? I don't have a job. How does that work?
Swipe. Swipe.
Cheddar biscuits, everyone.
Man, listen.
Everyone gets cheddar biscuits.
Captain Swipey. He's just swiping everything.
My card was running out. the tape, the stripe was running out. Do your taxes, y'all. If you're not gonna do your taxes, file for the extension. Do what you need to do so that they don't bother you.
Yeah, for real.
Get your earned income credit. Put all the things in. I feel like there's a difference between standardized and itemized because Credit Karma used to be good with that. Money if you did this, and they would help you with it. I'll put some links in the resources.
Definitely. But it's
what you got to do.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It was. Man, the taxes stuff was. You know, now it literally. Basically everyone I know just waits because they're like, we're gonna end up paying anyway.
Owing anyway.
So why give you my money in January when I could just wait till April?
Yeah.
Or or start the
or
payment
extend
process.
It.
Yeah, like you know, and I'm nervous with that. Because I might forget, and the IRS will just penalize you.
Oh, they remember.
Forget about it, man.
I think one of the first times I did my taxes on my own, I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know if I didn't read the mail or if I didn't open it at all. I probably didn't open it. But then all of a sudden, my rent money was out of my bank account.
Yeah.
What a lien was. And I was fucking with trash ass Chase, and they charge you when shit like that happens. So you get charged even additionally, right? Yes. So like, they have payment plans. Do your payment plan because if it don't, they'll hit you when you need it. And hopefully you won't have to be fucked up in the game.
That's a fact.
I was like, what's a lien? I have to look it up when that happened. Like, so you took all my money.
You woke up and there was a parentheses around your money.
My whole life has been a parentheses. Okay, we can talk about money. Look, it looks like we need to have an episode about money again.
You're like, wait a minute. I didn't have this much. Wait, what's this?
Woo,
why is there parentheses around my money?
my poor butthole. I'm telling you, it's been stress. It has been stress.
Tightened up.
Yeah, that's why I talk about, I want y'all to be easeful. We know that these things ain't shit. How do we work within them, right? We know a lot of these things ain't shit. Like a lot of our systems. But how do we make it, you know, as easeful as we can as adults to suck less unless you want to suck? That's another episode.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I'm glad you got yours done. I'm sorry you owe money. I probably will owe too. I'm up to the deductions though. So if folks have side hustles and find, you know, called to do a business works when we live in a system that prioritizes businesses and profit instead of people. So
or cocaine.
and or, right? Because sometimes that's the same thing with some people. That is the business.
Cocaine.
On that note, y'all.
I had to say one word to throw you off.
That's it. Mine is butthole, so it's fine. Mine.
No, I'm used to you saying that.
Because you're desensitized now. Before, your eyes used to open like, what?
What? Why are you saying buttholes to me? Yeah, it is what it is. But anyhow, it's a great show.
Yes.
Cindy Lee, thank you for always keeping me informed, keeping me in the loop. I'll be right by your side when the revolution hits. Don't worry.
Will you?
I will.
Because I got emergency plans. We got to talk then. We need to make plans.
I'll be right there. Well, I'm in ground zero, so I might have to make it to you, but
you better find one of them New Hampshire people. Be like, yo, can I use your house as a refuge? On that note, y'all, thank you, Hector, for being here and being in conversation. Tune in next time.
Word. Same bad time, same bad channel. Deuces.